Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's just like Christmas Eve, all the excitement in the air for getting ready to make our lineups. And of course, all the hope that we can take down these GPPs. Normally Wednesdays are like my Fridays from back when I was in high school. Just looking forward to the weekend, and our weekend starts on Thursday here. So really excited for this hour every single week. And this week is no different. I can see a few of you already down there in chat. I love to see that. We've got Wilson Dog down there, Robert Babb as well. Hopefully you're doing well, and Mightiest Helmet. So hopefully you guys are doing great on this Wednesday evening. Just going to hop right on into it. Going to try and do this stream a little bit faster than most and really leave as much time as humanly possible to go through the Q&A and to really do deep dives on all the players that you're going through. So let's go ahead, start this thing off as we always do with a look at the weather here for Wednesday, or say for Thursday and Friday. And then we'll take a look at the golf course. So trying to take a look at the weather, it is going to be finally a week where I don't see a massive difference between the two waves. So first and foremost, looking at wind finder, you'll see here on Thursday, relatively flat weather in the morning, relatively benign conditions, a little bit more significant wind in the afternoon, but it's only a 2 to 3 mile an hour difference. In terms of wind gusts, it's also just a 2 to 3 mile an hour difference. So really, there's going to be minimal, if any, difference between the two waves, which will be a majority due to how just firm and fast they are. Right? It's not going to be because one wave is dealing with more significant weather than the other. And it's pretty much the same thing for Friday. Now, the one thing to note here is that the wind gusts in the morning are maybe a little bit more severe than the rest of the day. But again, wind gusts tend to be a little bit variable. By the time we get to Friday, it could be just, clear across the board as it is for Saturday and Sunday as of right now. And when you look ahead at the weather, it just looks beautiful in the area. It doesn't look like there's going to be much wind, much weather to deal with at all, except in terms of precipitation. And now this is starting to go away a little bit. So this is why, I'm saying this, it's starting to look really nice out there, because this morning they were calling for like a 40% chance of rain. So now if you look at Thursday afternoon, you can see it's in the 20s. It's gone down significantly. It was closer to 40 to 45% right around 2 or 3 p.m. just this morning. Now it's down to 20%. And if you look into Friday morning, which they were also calling for some thunderstorms, it went from right around a 30 to 40% chance from right around 7 to 8 a.m. to right around like 20 to 10% now. So I'd imagine at some point a storm is going to come through. You can see still right around 20% the whole way through 2 p.m. that day. They just don't know when it's going to come through. So at some point, right, there's going to be a thunderstorm that comes through. The reason why I'm not all that worried about it is it's a thunderstorm. Anytime there's electricity in the air, let alone if it's raining, even gets that close to the golf course, they'll just call off play. You're not going to be playing through a thunderstorm, or at least the worst bits of it. You might get a little bit of wind kicking up as the storm approaches, that sort of thing. But you're looking at like a half an hour to an hour at most of sour conditions. And then after that storm were to come through, let's say if it does at all, it might not even end up hitting there on Thursday or Friday morning. Then you're looking at just perfect conditions afterwards, right? It'll be nice and damp out there if it rains. So in either circumstance, I'm really not looking at weather all that much. I'm expecting it to play easy no matter when these players are going out there. And frankly, if it rains here on Thursday or Friday, the winning score is going to be even lower. They'll be extra receptive in terms of the greens. And it's not like they need them anyways. I mean, last year, the winning score there at 15 under par could have been a lot lower. If you remember, Russell Henley completely gobbled it up there on the back nine. Or also would have been closer to 18 or 19 under par. So from the weather perspective, in terms of stacking, now, I think it's dependent on how many lineups you're playing. If you're playing a 2 to 3 max, a single entry, don't worry about it. If you're playing a 20 max, I probably wouldn't worry about it either. Now, if you're playing 150 lineups, you're going with more of a portfolio type of approach. Maybe stack one, 10, 15% of each wave, that sort of thing. You never know with these sort of things. Maybe they end up being completely wrong with the weather. So if we take a look at the weather channel over here, obviously, they have a lot higher chance of rain on here than Windfinder does. You can see pretty much no precipitation on their forecast to speak of. If it ends up being worse than they expect, right, both sites end up completely whiffing. You want to make sure you have a little bit of exposure there, especially if you're already entering 150 lineups, just in case that sort of thing happens, right? Sometimes these situations just pop up out of nowhere, and having exposure to, let's say, 10 to 15 lineups that are a 6-0 stack in either direction isn't really going to hurt you all that much anyways, right? If you're choosing 6 guys from the AM or the PM wave, you can probably pick at least 6, probably at least 10 to 15 guys especially in my case, I have at least 15 guys with both waves in my player pool that you can feel comfortable getting to. So I'm not really worrying about the weather all that much, which is a nice change from the last few weeks. I mean, for at least the last 4 to 5 weeks from what I can remember, it's at least been a factor, right? It might not have been a full type of stack kind of week where we're only playing guys from one wave, but it certainly were, situations where we were favoring one over the other. This week isn't really that type of thing. And now, if you were worried about the rain, you thought that, oh, they're going to play through some thunderstorms, which they're not. If it's thunderstorms, they're going to stop play. It's what happens every single time they are on PGA Tour. But if you think they're going to play through some type of rain, which at this point, I don't think there's any evidence of that, then maybe you play the AM PM stack. But everything I see sees thunderstorms, right? Isolated thunderstorms here. Just if they're going to end up playing through this sort of precipitation when it actually kicks up, it's more than likely going to be a stoppage of play, especially from the forecast we saw this morning, where it was calling for thunderstorms, like 40-50% chance of it. There, I believe it was like from 3 to 6 p.m. And then on Friday morning, it was like from 7 to 10 a.m. It's really calmed down from that point. If it's going to be a stoppage of play, right, they're going to get them off the golf course. I'm really not all that worried about it. We'll go ahead and hop into the player pool now. I'll go ahead and share my screen. We'll also catch up on chat, see what's going on down there, see who else we've got down there since our last check-in. We got Wilson Dog, who's asking about Harris English. The back, I think it was his hip that ended up being the injury for Harris English. Seems decent to me, right? Obviously, the last 2 weeks ended up being a missed cut, but he's kind of that volatile player anyways. We'll talk about him a little bit later. He'll definitely get plenty of airtime here. Wilson, asked about Harris English. We have Nick Mars, who says, do you think Hughes is mad that Lowry got his clubs back before him? Yeah, he doesn't have that same type of national prestige as somebody like a Shane Lowry. Obviously, Ireland known for its golfers, he being, a top 3 Irish golfer at this point, definitely has a little bit more pull than a poor guy, Mackenzie Hughes, trying to get Air Canada to give him his clubs. Yeah, I'm sure he's a little bit jaded about it. But hey, Hughes, Lowry, both could be worth a few looks this week. That's all I'm saying. Wink, wink. Maybe not Lowry. I am fading him. That's actually one of my public picks here we'll talk about. But Hughes, especially with a week with his golf clubs back, hey, might be worth a few looks, that's for sure. Wilson says, Siwoo Kim, I like him. What do you think? I like him too. We'll talk about him. He's going to be really chalky. So he's going to be a decision point, a decision point for every single person out there, and something that you're going to have to decide on, whether you're going to take an aggressive stance in playing Siwoo Kim or whether you're going to be fading him entirely, which is also almost just as aggressive, right? When he's going to be maybe the chalkiest player on the entire slate. So yeah, we'll talk about that for sure. Jin Yang says, who is your favorite this week? Oh, that's a tough one for me because I don't really have that one specific favorite here. I'll give you a few favorites, as we go through this video, Jin, that I've actually placed outright bets on. So that would probably be the best idea or best gauge of the guys that I have the most interest in. But we'll talk about them. There's not one specific player this week. It's a kind of more of a buckshot week type for me. It's I don't know. I think it's wide open. I think anybody has a chance to win at this event, specifically if they have that short game. They can go out there, gain in bunches on Bermuda grass greens. That is the one key differentiator for me, is I need somebody that is at least capable of hitting that spike putter, which is almost every single player in the field. But there's certainly guys we can cross off just based on their putting ability alone, right? It'd be like hitting the lottery for them to go out there, gain 4 or 5 strokes putting on Bermuda grass. Those type of players I've excluded. Let's see. I guess we'll go through the general thoughts of the player pool because it's always a good idea before we actually go through specifics here, the type of guys that I'm targeting. So we'll hop over here to the key stats tab. You'll see, of course, that number 1 is shots gained approach, but I want you guys to look at, the weighting here. First and foremost, it's the short buckets, right? If you take a look at the 125 to 150, it's weighted a lot more than something like the 225 to 200 range, right? Same thing with this, 100 to 125. I'm looking for more of those precision type of players, those shorter players on tour, especially around a Sedgefield Country Club, which is just under 7,100 yards. Driving accuracy is important around this track. You have to set up angles into almost all of these greens. Shots gained putting, again, all those Bermuda grass stats mean a lot to me. Also, putting over your last 24 measured rounds. Driving distance isn't, completely negligible. That's something that I've heard people say this week, that like driving distance completely doesn't matter. It does. It's helpful. It's always helpful on the PGA Tour. So ignoring that effect would not be a good thing for your analysis. Birdie or better percentage is important at a birdie fest. You have shots gained around the green. Par 4 scoring, it is a par 70. So you have the 2 extra par 4s. And shots gained at Donald Ross's eyes is shots gained at short golf courses. It's really not rocket science for me this week. Really just taking a look at a lot of the key characteristics of this golf course and trying to match it up to the players that I'm looking for. So let's talk through the top of the board. We're going to pretty much touch on everyone here. And then at the end of it, I'm also going to go through chat. So if there's anybody I didn't talk on in enough detail, let me know. Let me know any questions that you have about these studs. So let's start with the 10K range. First and foremost, Willie Z, if you haven't seen the fades video, it's unfortunately another fade, right? We did it last week. He hardly made the cut. Wasn't really a factor in large field GPPs. Now on Sunday Showdown, where we played him in bunches, he ended up coming through for us. So we liked that. But outside of that, you didn't really want to have him last week. And this week, I think that's going to be the same case. You're dealing with a birdie fest. And I say a birdie fest, right, because it's a par 70. If they labeled it as a par 71, which they very well could with some of the longer par 4s here with one of those like 490-yard par 4s, I mean, the winning score would be like 19, 20 under par, right? It's, par's a construct of the golf course. They just, kind of assign a number to it. And so for somebody like Willie Z at a golf course where putting really matters, you're going to have to go out there and cash in from 15 to 20 feet, 4 to 5 times on a round to have success. I really worry about it, particularly when we're on Bermuda grass, which is by far, I shouldn't say it's his worst surface because it's not. It's not Willie Z's worst surface, but it's not one of his favorable ones, right? Bent grass is something that he tends to putt on pretty well. Same thing with POA. So now that he's coming from bent grass, that favorable surface for him is now going to, something that he's kind of okay on. He might lose some of that form. And really that's what's driving his total model ranking here. It's why he's number 1 in the field, because over the last 24 measured rounds, right, he's gaining to the field. But if you remember, if you watched the fades video, that's going to come down to earth. We know that about Willie Z. He's not that type of putter. Anybody that's seen his putting stroke knows he's not that type of guy with the putter. And unfortunately, at this type of golf course, that is going to be a problem. Also, same thing with Shane Lowry. The guy cannot putt for some reason. So rather than Willie Z, who's gaining a bunch of strokes with the putter, Shane Lowry is losing a bunch. And while you might go, he's normally a pretty solid short game player, right? You can count on Shane Lowry to gain strokes with the putter every once in a while. That is certainly true. But on Bermuda grass, he doesn't usually do that. In fact, for his career, he's a loser on the surface. You can see negative 0.02 shots per round on Bermuda grass, which is pretty atrocious. I mean, like from a baseline perspective, he's worse than Willie Z on Bermuda grass, right? So if we're looking for a bounce back spot for Shane Lowry, it's probably not on these greens. So for me, it's going to be a stay away spot. He's also relatively high owned. He was 19% owned early in the day. I believe he's also at that exact same number right now. So to get leverage, you're going to have to play 40% in your lineups. He's up there with somebody like a Siwoo Kim in terms of his ownership. Who else is super chalky? Sungjae Im is also going to be extremely popular this week. In fact, I think Sungjae Im is the highest owned player on the slate in terms of ownership. You're going to have to invest a lot of lineups there. And again, just like a Willie Z, I worry about some of the putting. Webb Simpson, he's going to be a decision point for a lot of you out there. And unfortunately, I have to have him blacked out here. I can't give you too much in terms of my personal take on Webb Simpson here, other than I'll just give you some of the facts. First and foremost, he absolutely rakes at this place. We know this. One of the best course records you're ever going to see. And now over the last few years, you've seen him be mega chalk. 36% owned last year in the large field GPP. The year before that was 31% owned. The year before that, he was 26% owned. So you're talking about somebody who the field knows about this guy at the Wyndham Championship. Everyone knows to play, Webb Simpson at the Wyndham. His daughter's named Wyndham, for goodness sakes. But it seems like everyone this year is projecting him to be owned like 10 to 12%. Do I agree with that? No. I think he's going to be owned at like 17, 18%. There's just a track record of him being owned like 36% last year. And that was with plenty of people, not myself. I was huge on Webb last year, but plenty of people in the industry that were telling people to avoid Webb Simpson at those ownership levels. And he came in like 10% higher than everyone was expecting, right? People were willing to eat that chalk. Even with people trying to talk them off of him, I still think he's going to get some attention. And I know, right? The form is nowhere near what it was last year or the year before that or the year before that for a Webb Simpson. But that name recognition, that course history is at least going to get some people to play him. So if you're, playing Webb Simpson, thinking you're going to get him at single digit ownership, think again. That is not going to happen. I can guarantee you he's not going to be single-digit owned. So just understand that if you're going to play him this week, again, I'm not really letting you know whether I am or not. You're going to have to play a significant amount. Like you're going to have to take 30, probably 35% at least to get leverage, if not more, if you're trying to get adequate leverage to the field. So it's a decision point you're going to have to make there. Just like Siwoo Kim, who I guess we'll skip around a little bit because he fits the same type of description here. At $8,800, he might be like 20% owned this week. And it makes a lot of sense. He's coming in with form. He loves the golf course, has a great track record, is extremely outspoken as saying that this is his favorite golf course on tour. And all the metrics are exactly where we want them for Siwoo Kim. So if we take a look at this, he's gaining across the board, kind of doing that Siwoo Kim thing where he's just going to be better at everything than your average tour player, but not really great at any one aspect. But from any given week, he can spike in any one category, right? Like he's more than capable of getting a bunch of strokes off the tee, on approach, or with the putter. He can go nuclear in any three of those categories. And at this golf course specifically, he has a track record of going nuclear with the putter. And if he could just bring those irons, which, he's flashed from time to time. I mean, if you look at the recent form, you'll see why a lot of people really like him this week. I mean, last week, was really solid with the approach play, finished in the top 15. At the Open Championship, it was a little bit more the putter, finished in the top 15. But you can look before this, right? A bunch of missed cuts, right? That's the, negative end of the volatility. With 3 out of 5 missed cuts, he is still gaining across all 4 categories. That's the ridiculous part that people don't really, consider with the Siwoo Kim, right? Is it looks consistent here on the shots gained metrics. He is far from a consistent player. I mean, he's more than liable to lose across all 4 categories. He's more than liable to gain 5 or 6 strokes in all 3 shots gained categories. And when you're looking for a GPP play in DFS, that's what you're looking for. Now, from the outright market where he's 28-1, no thank you. I mean, realistically, I'm much more willing to bet Siwoo Kim when he's like 45 or 50-1 at like the Amex when he won a few years ago, right? That made a lot more sense. I believe he was actually even a little bit longer than that. But at those type of ranges, at those weaker field events, are where I'm trying to bet Siwoo Kim. I'm not trying to bet him in, this isn't, a weak field by any means, but it's still, about your PGA Tour average field here at the Wyndham Championship at 28-1. No, thank you. So I'm going to take him in DFS. He's going to be extremely chalky. And believe it or not, as of right now, as of the run that I ran about 15 minutes before the live stream here, he was my highest owned player in my player pool, which is the scariest thing I've probably said. And honestly, saying it out loud makes it feel a little bit worse than it is in reality, right? When I was putting in my lineups, I was able to stomach it. But, when you say it out loud that he's your highest owned player in your player pool, it sits a little bit differently. It doesn't sit very well with all the volatility that's there. But if you're going to play him this week, you have to, right? He's going to be that, super big piece of chalk. It's not easy to stomach, but I'm doing it. He's going to be my highest owned player and probably going to make my break my week. And just, based on the course history, based on the recent form, he's checking all the boxes I'm looking for, but don't think that makes him foolproof, right? This is PGA DFS. This is golf that we're talking about. He is more than liable to go out there and chunk slam, right? Just understand that if you're playing Siwoo Kim. That's why it makes me so uncomfortable to play him and to say that he's my highest owned play this week, because he's more than liable to do so, but he's also live to win this event and to win this by 4 or 5 strokes this week. And that's almost too much for me to pass up in DFS, to be honest. Just I love the play. And if I can take him in 40% of my lineups and get that leverage, it's going to be something that I'm obviously doing. Going back up to the top of the 10K range, I love myself some Sungjae and Billy Ho. Now, Sungjae is getting a ton of steam. Early in the week, I thought he might be like 15, 20% owned at the very most, but he's at least projecting, per my projections, to be the highest owned player in the slate. So kind of like with Siwoo Kim, you have to play him in bunches if you're going to take him. Same thing with a Webb Simpson. A little bit less so, right? He's going to be a little bit lower owned than a Siwoo Kim or a Sungjae M. But these type of guys, if they're going to be in your pool, you're going to have to take aggressive stands on them. So for Sungjae, I think it's well warranted. A immaculate course history. So if we look at that, you'll see what is it? 24th, 9th, 6th place finish. Billy Ho, another immaculate course history, 2nd, 6th, and 11th place finish. So you're not going to find better track records in the field. Both players are coming in with form. You can see both of them are top 20 model rankings, particularly Billy Ho, who's number 7 in the field. And both are really good putters on Bermuda grass. So the real X factor for these two players, in my opinion, are the course history and then the putting on Bermuda grass, which, kind of makes sense, right? They should go line it, hand in hand. This is a golf course where putting is arguably the most important stat. I would argue that driving distance is probably number 2, and then a lot of those approach buckets. But more than anything, right, it's the Bermuda grass stats and then your form coming in. They check both of those boxes emphatically, whereas, a lot of the other guys up top here are a little bit more shaky in that category. They're not necessarily slam dunk plays here in the 10K range. So that's why I kind of see myself gravitating a little bit more so towards these 2 players than a lot of the other guys here. And definitely will be key parts of my pool. So that's probably a good way to sum them up. I did a whole breakdown on why I like them in my core picks video, though. So we talked about Lowry. Let's talk about Corey Connors. Very similar to a Shane Lowry and a Will Zalatoris. It's a worry about the putting. And for Corey Connors, he's actually been pretty decent of late with the putting stats, where you can see he's gaining 0.27 shots per round, but we know he's not that guy. We know from a long-term sample size that he's not really a ceiling putter. And even if he has a good week with the flat stick, right, he's gaining like 2 or 3 strokes to the field. At this golf course, you are not going to separate yourself from the field with your ball striking. So a ceiling performance for Connors is probably him gaining like 10 strokes to the field tee to green, which, seems like a lot. Like for most players, you'd feel pretty good about that. But Corey Connors is capable of gaining like 15, 16, even I would argue to say 20 strokes to the field with his ball striking at any given event. Put him in a weak field event, put him at a ball strikers type of golf course. He could realistically do that over 4 rounds. He's not going to do that here, right? It's not a ball striking heavy type of golf course. And on top of that, you're talking about a guy who has a max ceiling of probably like 3-4 shots gained putting at the very most. I don't know if he can actually win this event, like just per the metrics, like based on what we know Corey Connors to be. I don't know if he can actually win this golf tournament. So for me, at $9,600, that's going to be a fade there. And you can see on Bermuda grass, he's not horrible, right? But I believe the last time I checked all his Bermuda grass numbers, the most strokes he had gained in one single round on Bermuda was like 1.1 strokes, something like that. There was no actual ceiling rounds where he was gaining over 2 strokes to the field with the flat stick. Now, there were a couple decent rounds, right? You'd expect that on any surface, but there wasn't any quote-unquote true ceiling rounds there. Terrell Hatton, I still love. He's single-digit owned, which you got to love here. In a relatively condensed player pool up top, relatively weak field. $9,400, it makes sense. He's in the AM wave, which, like I mentioned, if there's going to be any sort of advantage, it's going to be the AM PM wave, but I don't think there's going to be one to begin with. But I'll be getting there in bunches. He likes himself a short golf course, another player that checks that Bermuda grass putting stat. So I talked about it during my core picks video, but I am still there in bunches, especially now that he's low owned, and we expected that early in the week. But it's nice to get that confirmation. HV3, another core pick that I'm standing behind, has a great course fit here, has had decent success around the course history. I mean, it's not been elite for somebody like HV3 at $9,000, but 57th, 7th place, a few made cuts, another top 10 finish. So it's been, kind of hit or miss, but the misses have at least been made cuts, which I think is, pretty promising for somebody of HV3's track record. But more than anything, he's a higher pedigree player than he was in the past. So those top 10 finishes, might be him getting into contention this time around. So I like his chances here. And at $9,000, if he was $100 cheaper, if he was $8,900 rather than Tim McCarthy, if they ended up swapping places there, you can almost just swap their ownership levels. Like, I believe there's like a 6-7% gap between their projections in terms of their ownership here between Denny and HV3. You could realistically swap their projections just based on that $100 difference. It's crazy what that does to a lot of the slapdicks out there when they're making their lineups. Next up, we got Siwoo Kim, who we talked about, so we'll skip that. Gave him plenty of airtime to this point. Next up, we got Kevin Kisner, though, who I thought I was probably going to end up fading. Like, I thought he was going to get some attention, but kind of like Webb Simpson, right? Around the industry, nobody wants to play Kevin Kisner. It seems like people are kind of bored about it. The form coming in for Kisner is nowhere near as good as it has been for like the last few years. Same thing for Webb Simpson. So maybe that's why people are kind of jumping ship. But we've seen time and time again, like course history is a thing. Like guys will show up at events, come in with absolutely no form and then go out there and win. Case in point, KH Lee at the Byron Nelson, right? He was coming into that event with, I believe, like 7 straight missed cuts. he won, and he won like handily at that event. And that was really like the test case that just like drove me nuts. Before that, he had Jordan Spieth at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. He was playing horribly coming in there. I believe he was losing in like almost all his shots gained categories over his last 24 rounds, and then ended up almost winning that golf tournament. Tom Hoge a few weeks ago, right? We took a shot on him coming in with like 5 straight missed cuts, almost ends up winning the golf tournament, right? It just happens sometimes. It's at a golf course that fits your game, right? That you're comfortable on, and that box is checked like 10,000 times for Kevin Kisner. In fact, probably 4 million times for the $4 million that he's won around this golf course. So Kevin Kisner, he loves himself the Wyndham Championship. It's pretty much his retirement plan at this point, to show up to the Wyndham, finish top 5, finish top 10 almost every single year. The RSM Classic, a lot of the other short venues around the PGA Tour, like the Travelers Championship, for example, are typically where he rakes in. And to this point, maybe hasn't done it this year as much as normal, but I really like his chances this week to buck that trend. We got JT Poston, who we'll talk about. Talked him up as a core pick. I absolutely love him still. Kind of like a Siwoo Kim, you're going to have to take a pretty aggressive stand here. So the ownership is obviously blacked out. It is on my Patreon page if you're looking for access, but he's going to be close to 20% owned. So if you're going to try and get leverage, 35 to 40% is going to get the job done. So another guy that if you're going to play, you better feel pretty good about it, right? And obviously I do. He's won here before. He's coming in with the best form of his life. Pretty much every metric we're looking for with him is just checked with a big old check mark, right? Gaining a bunch on approach, gaining a bunch with the putter. And it's been for quite some time too. If we take a look at the last 50 measured rounds, it holds up. So you can see gaining across 3 out of the 4 shots gained categories. The one category he's losing in, approach, which can be a little bit worrisome, right? You hope that he doesn't regress to that type of form. But based on how he's been hitting it of late, I'm expecting him to go out there and make this yet another good showing, especially because he's not defending champion, right? It's not like he's coming in off a win. He's had plenty of time since that win to digest it. And I expect him to have quite a bit of success. And you can see over the last few times out, it may have affected him, right? Because he missed the cut there in 2020 and 2021. But I'd argue that he's going to come around at some point, because from just, a course fit perspective, it makes perfect sense. A great putter, great with some of the shorter wedges. And off the tee, he can struggle from time to time. He's relatively long, but he's very inaccurate with a lot of his accuracy. So he can deal with issues there, is what I'm trying to say. He can get himself into a pickle from time to time. Perhaps around the Wyndham Championship, where he's laying up off the tee quite often, won't necessarily be as big of an issue. But we'll have to see. Wasn't there when he won, that's for sure. Went out there, gained a ton of strokes putting on the green that year too. So I wouldn't put that past him either. Let's go ahead and catch up on chat. See if there's any questions about some of these guys up top. Looks like there are. We have quite a few comments down there, but we'll get through them. We have Anderson who says, "What's up, Luke? We got to do another video together. JT Poston is a great pick." Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm definitely down to do so. We can do a course breakdown together. But yeah, let me know if you hear from JT Poston, because I think you might win this week. That'd be pretty sweet. Get a second win this season. I know you're all about JT Poston too. So yeah, glad you're on the train there, Anderson. Hopefully you're doing well here. Jimmy says, "What's up, brother? Hopefully you're doing well as well, Jimmy. Love to see you down there in chat." Tori says, "Any love for Ju Young?" I don't want to give it away too much, but it's hard not to have love for Ju Young, right? And the field is coming in bunches behind Ju Young Kim. He's going to be one of the higher owned players on the slate, and it makes a lot of sense. So I don't want to, give away all of the goods here, but yes, there is a lot of warranted love for Ju Young Kim. The kid looks like an absolute stud. I have played him every single time he's been in the field, except for the first time he was here on tour, and that was right before he ended up playing in the U.S. Open. He ended up playing here on tour. I did not play him that week, but ever since then, he's been in my player pool every single time. I am a huge believer in Ju Young Kim there. Wilson says, "Hey man, I watched the U.S. Junior Am. It was a good ending." Yeah, I saw it on TV too. I didn't end up watching to the end. Ended up flicking off because I had to go and actually record one of these live streams here, one of the course videos as well. But yeah, it looked pretty awesome on there. A lot of good talents. One of the kids hit a 420-yard drive, which is just outstanding. We have Gary Kerr down in chat. What is going on? Jin Yang says, "What do you think about Zalatoris?" Zalatoris is a fade. I cannot trust the putting here. And yeah, Ju Young Kim I absolutely love. Just talked about him a bit. Mighty says, running hot, can't talk players. Yeah, I know. You said that last week was one of your better weeks ever. Hopefully, we can continue that heater for you. He says, if my top golfer wins this week, I won't name her son Jay. Yeah, you don't want to pull Wyndham. I just said a Wyndham. We don't want to pull Webb Simpson. He named his child Wyndham when he's never won this golf tournament. Like, come on, you got to win this golf tournament, Webb, to be able to do that sort of thing. Maybe he does it this week. Nick Tay says, what's your strategy for amount of core plays you put in every lineup? I have 4 I love. Is 4 core guys and swapping the other 2 a good strategy? Well, I play 150 lineups, Nick. So that is not something that I can do, right? I'm not going to take 4 players and then swap in 2 for 150 lineups. That is completely dependent on how many lineups you're going with, your risk tolerance, your personal strategy. You don't need to do a core pick strategy. You can. If you're playing like 2 to 3 lineups, I certainly think you should. And I think that's a great strategy. If you're going for something like a 3 max tournament, if you're playing in a 20 max, then it's starting to get a little bit aggressive, right? Just to have 2 spots to work with 20 lineups is probably overdoing it a bit, right? You could probably do something like 2, maybe 3 players locking in a 20 max. But in a 150 max, that shouldn't even be part of your process, at least for what I'm doing. So that would be my take on that, Nick. I don't necessarily lock in core picks into lineups like that. That's not my thought process. That's not what core pick means for me on here. Nick Tay says playing 5 lineups and 5 entries. So if you're playing 5 lineups, I could see it, right? 3 lineups is probably the sweet spot for using something like that. But 5 lineups, you could probably get away with it too. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't hate it for a small sample size. But if you're playing anything more than that, open it up a little bit. Like maybe take it to 3 players that you're using as a core and then swap 3 players for something like 5 to 10 lineups. Robert says, what is your projected slapdick of the week? Ooh. So slapdick of the week, I'm assuming is somebody that I'm playing that might end up missing the cut. I think it has to be Sibu Kim. Could be the potential slapdick of the week. Like I said, he is more than capable of going out there and missing the cut, but he's also more than capable of going out there and winning this golf tournament. So potential slapdick of the week might be Siwoo Kim, potentially because he's also my highest owned player, but we'll have to see there for sure. The Arthurn says, how heavy are you weighting driving accuracy / fairways gained? So if you scroll back a little bit, I actually show all the model weighting that I'm using for this week. So if you go back a little bit, you can see that. But I'm looking at it quite heavily. It's not really a driver heavy golf course, but if there's one thing you have to do, it's hit fairways in bunches, particularly for a lot of the guys that we've seen actually win this golf tournament. So quite heavily, but you can actually see the percentages if you go back and check out the model section. Soulfate says Davis Riley bounced back. I think so. Wilson says, hey, dude, quick question. People a while back, John Daly. Do you think he's going to make the PGA? So in terms of Little John, I do. He looks like a really good player, especially from what I've heard from some of the people that watched the college tour. Jack Fisher says, think anybody has gone under the radar this week? I think Davis Riley has, and I'm assuming that's what you think. I agree. He's gone under the radar. I don't think many people have talked him up. I actually kind of avoided talking him up all that much this week because I'm kind of hoping he goes under the radar too. But there's a few of them. So I'll give you a few names here. Let's see. Aaron Wise is going under the radar. I haven't heard anybody talking him up this week, or at least anybody that I follow. Let's see. Justin Rose is probably going a little bit under the radar. And I'm only pointing out guys that are actually like pretty good fits here too. Like I'm not going to point out, oh, somebody like Kevin Streelman is going under the radar. Yeah, there's a reason why he's dog shit. There's an actual reason why he's going under the radar, right? Let's see. Cage Lee, kind of going under the radar, at least in terms of my opinion. In terms of guys up top, I think Terrell Hatton is, right? He's single-digit owned at this point, and I'm extremely bullish on his chances. In fact, I've already bet him outright to win here. I know somebody asked me about my favorites. It's like kind of going to some of these uglier names because you're getting a lot of value at this field. And Terrell Hatton was somebody early on Monday morning I saw a ton of betting value on. I ended up hitting a smash bet on it. We'll have to see if it holds up. We'll have to see if I end up winning big this week or end up cashing out or not. But it's those type of plays that I think are being a little bit overlooked and that in DFS might be giving you the type of leverage that you're looking for. So I think that'd be a good answer for you there. We have Sway says, I think Bez is under the radar. I agree with that. I didn't think of that looking at the list there, but that is another great example there. He may have Valley. I don't even know. I haven't checked back that far in terms of course history. I look at the last 10 years, so that's 11 years ago. It would make sense if he won 11 years ago. I'm only looking at the last 10 years of history, but I have no idea. Yeah, he did win in 2011. Okay, makes sense. So, okay, we can cut the shit about him naming his child Wyndham, right? It makes sense now, right? It's not like he was finishing in second place every year and then ended up naming his child that. And I'm not going to throw the person I heard that from under the bus. Prominent name in the industry said that, and I took their word on that, by the way, and apparently they were wrong. So, I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but that's why I did say that. Gary says, thoughts on Mitchell? I think Mitchell doesn't fit the golf course, but a lot of the ownership reflects that. Not a lot of people want to play Keith Mitchell this week. It's just whether you think he can break through on a golf course that doesn't really fit his game. Same thing with Buckley to me. Now, Buckley, I don't know why a lot of people are kind of like glossing over this fact, but he's another like bomber type of player. Like he's long off the tee. He's all about his shots gained tee to green. Not the best putter. Now, of late, the putter's been pretty hot. That's why you've seen Hayden Buckley on leaderboards, but he has not been for his entire season. In fact, he's one of the worst putters on tour for most of the season. So he's a little bit hit or miss. You saw him heat up during the fall swing and then kind of fizzle out. We're seeing him kind of heat up now over the last 3 to 4 events. He's probably going to fizzle out at some point. But if you think he can continue that heater for 1 to 2 more weeks, then why not, right? You can get to Hayden Buckley. I won't be myself, but I don't think it's the best course fit. Kind of like a Keith Mitchell, right? They're solid players. Like I think Hayden Buckley, more than capable of holding a tour card for quite some time. But, I want to play him at a ball striking heavy golf course, kind of like a Will Zalatoris, a Shane Lowry, those guys up top that aren't really putting the best of late, or at least I don't project the putt well at this golf course, are guys that I kind of worry about here. Let's see what else we've got. Yeah, Travis, he says, what's up, Luke? I appreciate the content as always. Have you looked into Hadley at all? So yeah, Travis, I don't know if you see him in the player pool there. You can go ahead and see whether he's in there or not. But yeah, I like Hadley. He heats up this time of year and fits the golf course quite well. But I don't want to give the goods away. And you already know the answer on it, Travis. So go ahead and check out the Patreon page there. But yeah, I don't want to give it away too much. Ali says, how do you play it safe in a highly volatile event like this? I don't know if this one's highly volatile. The course history at this event has proven to be extremely predictive. Like it's up there with like Augusta National in terms of its course history. I'd argue that something like the 3M Open is an event where you have to worry about that. I don't really feel that way about the Wyndham Championship. There's not that much water in play. It plays pretty predictable year to year, particularly if we're going to get some rain this time around. I don't really worry about this event specifically, but in general, if you're going to get an extremely volatile field or extremely volatile golf course set up, whatever the conditions may be, you spread out your player pool. You don't take as many aggressive stands. In general, when there's a super chalky player, you fade them whenever you have a really volatile field. But that's not my take on this at all. I just to make it clear to everyone out there, I don't think it's going to be an extremely volatile week. Big Tech says, so I was a slapdick and played Joel last week. Will I be on it again? I'll be playing Joel. I didn't play him last week, but I will be on him this week. That's for sure. Nick Mars says Hadley. Yeah, I like Hadley. Yes, that's for sure. Hosny says, thoughts on Stallings and Turan. Stallings is coming in on a heater. I have played him. So out of the last, I believe, 6 starts, let's go ahead and just confirm this here. I've played him every time he's finished in the top 15. Every time he's missed the cut, I haven't played him. And I'll give you my take here in a second afterwards. 10th place, we played him at the Rocket Mortgage. He was a core pick for us. At the John Deere, he was a core pick. He finished in 4th. At the Travelers, he was a core pick. He finished in 8th place. Missed the cut at the U.S. Open. I faded him then. Before that, it was another top finish. I forget what golf tournament he was at, but he was another core pick for us this week. This week, he's not a core pick. You could probably guess what I'm doing with him then, right? Not playing Scott Stallings. I'm expecting the heater to come to an end. And for whatever reason, I have a really good gauge on it. And there's no like statistical reason that I don't want to play him this week because when you look at the shots gained metrics, they're just like otherworldly. The only thing I can tell you about it is he's not that guy. He's not a world-class ball striker, at least not anymore, right? In the past, he won events because he was a pretty solid ball striker. He's way over the hump at this point. Not somebody we can count on gaining 0.9 shots gained approach per round. So I'm not in on Scott Stallings this week. And I seem to be the Scott Stallings whisperer. Like pretty much every time I play the guy, he finishes top 10, top 5 in GPPs. I'm not going to be on him this week. So that's the best advice I can give you there. Excuse me, guys. We'll touch on a few more questions and then hop into the player poll. And by the way, with questions, try to keep them like light. Let's not ask about like 4 players in quick succession. We gotta, try and keep the show open to more people. Continue through the player poll and everything. So let's not ask that many questions. Try and keep them to the guys you really want to know about, or at least spread them out a little bit. Liam Jones says, anyone who names their kid after the tournament, you best believe I will be laying some money on Webb. I can't argue against it. Like I said, it's a decision point you have to make, but the guy's been an absolute beast here. Mitch says, any interest in Sloan? He's been doing dog shit, but has consistent course history. Yes, he has. Over the last 2 years, he's been great here, Mitch, and was second place last year. So yes, great course history. Like you mentioned, second place last year, and has made a bunch of birdies of late. So even though it hasn't been really good recent form, particularly from like the finishes, if you take a look at even the shots gained metrics, they don't look all that well. But if you look at the fantasy scoring perspective, he's actually done pretty well, even with missing some cuts. So I'm there, Mitch. I like it, especially with the course history. Another question we have, Pendrith and Gotterup. I hate both of them, to be honest with you there. They're both bombers, 2 guys I just don't prefer at this type of golf course. I'm trying to take the guys that are a little bit more plotters, a little bit more accurate, can get it done with the shots gained putting, and that's not really a Pendrith or Gotterup. Rick Anderson says, who are the top 2 payups? The 2 guys I have in my core picks video, Sunji M and Billy Horschel for me. Travis Swenson says, let's be honest, what did you get to eat at Chick-fil-A? I got 2 Chick-fil-A sandwiches today and some fries. It's pretty solid. It's actually from lunch. There's water in this at this point right now, so it's not even like soda. Just used the cup again, filled it up with some ice and whatnot. Gary Kerr is asking about Adam Scott. So I'm not going to tell you whether I'm playing him or not. That's on the Patreon page. But pretty decent form. He almost won here last year. So somebody with the course history angle, you could certainly take a look at. Great with the wedges. Checks a lot of boxes for sure. But going to have to check out the Patreon page to get a definitive answer there. Mightiest says, when we hit the 6K range, a short peek or mini look at Trent Phillips. Sure. Yeah, sure thing. We'll look at him. And JG Funk says, I'm putting my big boy pants on, fading the entire 10K range. I considered it. I don't want to, tell you you're crazy for it because I considered it too. So I won't be doing it. I don't have nearly as big of stones as somebody like you, JG, but I understand it. This is a golf tournament where pretty much anybody could win. And if we get like a 6K range guy that ends up winning, right, it doesn't really matter who you have up top. Just the guys that make the most birdies are going to be the guys you have to have. So I don't think it's the worst idea in human history. In fact, out of my 150 lineups, I have a few lineups, or actually more than a few lineups, like 40% of my lineups that are starting outside of the 10K range. So I don't think it's crazy whatsoever. Rick Anderson says Wise or JT Poston. That's JT Poston for sure. And Michael says Rose. I do like Justin Rose. He's actually played well here before last year. What did he end up finishing? 10th place last year, which was really solid for him. He wasn't playing his best golf. Excuse me, guys. There in 2021. Wasn't really playing his Justin Rose brand of golf. But of late, in terms of his recent form, he's been a lot better than people want to give him credit for. Made the cut at the Scottish. You can see top 5 finish at the Canadian. Made the cut at the U.S. Open. Before that, a few other made cuts for Justin Rose. So has been a little bit more consistent. Is clearly, right, trying to make it through the FedEx Cup playoffs here. And I believe to get it into the top 125, I don't think he has to do anything drastic, but he has to have a pretty solid week. So he'll certainly have that motivation behind him. My throat is like really killing me, guys. Excuse me. Out of nowhere, too. I was feeling fine before. And I had COVID before, so they say like you get some of these like symptoms long term, just annoying at this point. Not sick whatsoever, not testing positive or anything, but just get annoyingly scratchy throats every once in a while here. But yeah, I do like Justin Rose quite a bit. Let's go ahead and continue with the player pool. We'll get to questions a little bit later on. After we finish the 7K range, I'll do questions on the 7K range. So if you have any questions, let's try and keep them to the guys here. So Mark Hubbard, I like quite a bit. Talked about him on the value picks video. He likes himself an easy golf course, a short golf course, also a relatively weak field, and he checks all of those boxes. Talked about Adam Long a little bit earlier. I like the fact that he first and foremost is an accuracy first guy off the tee, loves himself Bermuda grass, has been putting the absolute greens off the last 24 measured rounds, and just again checks almost every box that I'm looking for. So Adam Long, by the way, um, I have this weird feeling that he's going to be way chalkier than we think. And I hate saying this now because like it's going to talk a lot of you off of playing him, and maybe it's a good thing. Maybe he's going to end up being a fish play this week, but I want to make this point clear because I do actually have this really sneaky suspicion here that Adam Long's going to be like 20% owned this week. I have him projected well below that. My algorithm kind of agrees with like what logic would think that he'd come in closer to like 12 and a half, 13% owned. But I have a sneaking suspicion that people are just going to play a shit ton of Adam Long this week. The shots gained metrics, not the shits gained metrics, look really solid for him. So if you take a look at those, he's gaining pretty much across the board. He's good on Bermuda grass. The course history, I believe, is like half decent for Adam Long. He's made the cut. He missed the cut a few times. Like it's decent enough. But the recent form, like he's just playing on another planet at this point. Top 15 finish, top 15 finish, top 25. Another top 25 finish there at the RBC Canadian. He's never been in this stretch of golf before, and he's way cheaper than he should be. I've seen quite a few people talk him up around the industry. He seems like somebody who's going to be way higher owned than we think. So don't be surprised if he's that one surprise name there in the top 4 to 5 players in terms of ownership. That's like 20% owned tomorrow. He could very well be that guy. Sebastian Munoz is probably going to be a little bit lower owned if that ends up happening, which might end up actually making him the sleeper pick here in reality rather than an Adam Long. But I like the fact that he's an aggressive player. And in the past, like even though he has this, obviously power game, he's extremely long off the tee, pretty good with some of his long irons. He's tore up some of these birdie fest at shorter golf courses in the past. So he's shown an ability to succeed here. So I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that he plays well. Alex Smalley is a member at Sedgefield Country Club, which that's why a ton of people want to play him this week. People are going to harp on that, yada, yada, yada. Outside of that, he's just a good course fit per the numbers. Good on Bermuda grass. And you can see of late, the only thing he can't do is putt. If you take a look at the stats, they're absolutely outstanding. Gaining close to 2/3 of a stroke per round on approach, gaining a bunch off the tee. And you can see losing significantly with the flat stick. But for his career, over a relatively large sample size, gains on Bermuda grass. And now we're getting him at his home course. He's a member here at Sedgefield. He's been since 2020. He's going to know these greens. He's going to have a lot of familiarity with them. A lot more than any other rookie on the PGA Tour. So at $7,500, I am all in on Smalley. I'm actually playing him at 25% of my lineups, which, at the projected ownership number I have him at, it's going to be significant leverage to the field. Next up, we got Brendan Todd at $7,500. Another player who makes sense from a course fit perspective, but also shots gained putting Bermuda. Also, the recent form is there. So kind of the trifecta of things that I'm looking for, where you can see that ball striking numbers aren't necessarily ideal, but the putting numbers are off the charts. And realistically, off the tee numbers, I don't worry all that much about a Brendan Todd. He's never going to gain a bunch off the tee. Definitely an accuracy over a power type of player. But with the irons, he's serviceable, right? And by serviceable, I mean more than capable of gaining 3 or 4 strokes to the field any given week with the irons. Also more than capable of losing those 3 to 4 strokes to the field with the irons any given week. So don't play Brendan Todd thinking you're getting some safe play because he hits every single fairway. He could still miss almost every single green. Like that's well within his range of outcomes. So he's not a safe play by any means, but does have that GPP upside if you can get anything working with the irons this week. Harris English, I promised to talk about him a little bit earlier. He's $7,500. He loves himself Bermuda grass. And obviously, if you look at the shots gained metrics, and I'm not going to call, I've seen multiple people do this week, and it really pisses me off, that are looking at Harris English for his season. That are looking at even some of the stuff from the fall, or, God forbid, and somebody did this week, looked at like his 6 or 7 performances ago. That was before his hip surgery. That was like almost an entire year ago for Harris English. And there was somebody looking at the shots gained metrics from that. If you're looking at the last 24 measured rounds for Harris English, you're looking from stats from mid-2021, which are completely useless. That was when he was injured. He was hardly even able to walk. Was quoted as saying as much on the PGA Tour. No shit, he couldn't hit a ball well, right? That's why he had to be out for 6 to 7 months to get that surgery. It was a invasive surgery that really, he looks a lot better now. And first off, he played extremely well at the Travelers his first time back, actually, it was at the US Open he played the first time, made the cut there, then played well at the Travelers the week after that. Sure, he's played poorly the last few weeks, which you're going to have to look past if you want to play Harris English this week. Again, a missed cut there. What was it? The Rocket Mortgage and the Open Championship. But remember, last week, he missed the cut on the number. The Open Championship is a major championship, right? Cut him some slack. The guy's coming off a freaking hip surgery. I think the guy has a lot of upside because we've seen him win the last few years multiple times. Like, people love to forget that about Harris English. Like, the guy is a proven winner and has shown the ability to get that spike upside. So at $7,300 with his Bermuda grass pedigree over his career, definitely somebody I'm getting to. I think he has enough upside to, first off, crack the top 5, top 10 for sure. I think that's well within his range of outcomes, but also to potentially end up winning in this golf tournament. So also somebody I bet an outright on. So I took a little bit of a bullish approach there. Now it's a half unit outright. So it's not my full unit like I do for most of my plays there. But early in the week there on a Monday, I got incredible value in doing so. Next value pick we're going to talk about, going to be Rory Sabatini. So $6,900. Another guy who has incredible course history. If you take a look at it, just it's among the best that you're going to find in the field. So top 10 finish last year, also a top 10 finish in 2019, top 5 finish in 2017, made the cut in 2018, and in 2020 missed cut, which I'm willing to look past. It's Rory Sabatini. He's not going to be a for sure thing. We know this. Like, we're playing him well knowing that he could miss the cut this week, but he's also posted 3 top 10 finishes in his last 3 starts here. And over his last few starts on the PGA Tour, they've started to get a little bit better, right? Made the cut at the Rocket Mortgage, made the cut at the John Deere. And coming into this event the last few years, particularly there in like 2018 or 2021, it's not like he was coming in with form. So you're talking about somebody who seems to be able to flip the switch at this golf course. And the fact that he's made 2 made cuts coming into it, I think bodes well for his chances this week. An AM Wave player, super cheap at $6,900. Will the real Rory please stand up, right? Honestly, the first Rory on the PGA Tour, so I'd argue the real Rory there. But somebody this week, I'm certainly hoping plays like Rory McIlroy. Let's go ahead and talk about the 6K range in general, which you can see I have everything blacked out because honestly, this is the money range, right? If you're looking for some of the dumpster diver plays, you are going to have to be on the Patreon page to get them. But I'll give you, in general, a few of the things that I'm looking for, because when you're down here in the 6K range, you are not going to find that cookie cutter perfect type of play. You realistically are just looking for breadcrumbs, right? You're not going to find the entire cookie altogether where everything makes sense. Even Rory Sabatini, right? The recent form metrics aren't that good. Now, they're not horrible. He's kind of been holding it together despite missing cuts here. You can see right around a neutral with almost every category but the approach play. But a lot of guys down here, there's 2-3 holes in their game, right? But the more important part is what you're hunkering down on. And for me this week, there's a few things. First and foremost, shots gained putting on Bermuda grass, which you're probably getting tired of hearing about, but time and time again, it makes the difference, particularly when you're going from a stretch of golf where we played on bent grass for at least like the last 2 to 3 months, now to Bermuda. It's a huge adjustment. And for the players that have gotten used to bent grass, they're probably going to struggle. Whereas the guys that are Bermuda grass specialists, and by Bermuda specialist, I'm talking like 0.33 or more shots gained per round on the surface, are going to be excited to get to this surface. And, with that newfound confidence, might go out there and get into contention. So that's one key stat that I'm looking at. Something else, I'm looking for somebody with a high birdie or better percentage. So Ryan Armour ended up withdrawing, which I was pissed off at $6,700 when he did, because he was going to be in about 20% of my lineups. Now, why did I want to play Ryan Armour? Why was he somebody I was bullish on? Because he is an extremely aggressive player, makes birdies and bunches, also happens to be really accurate off the tee, and also was coming in with some pretty decent form. So he checked 3 boxes that I'm looking for. So obviously, we talked about a little bit of the putting stats, right? On Bermuda was a pretty solid putter there. But more importantly, a good driver. That's something else that I'm looking here down low, but also looking for the high birdie or better percentage. If they can check at least 2 of those 3 boxes, they're probably somebody I'm taking a shot on. Now, if they can only check 1 of the boxes and it's a really emphatic yes, I may consider it. But really, those are the 3 things that I'm looking at. So I'm not going to talk about any specific names because, like I said, I have to keep quite a few of the picks behind the Patreon wall there to make sure that they're getting all the value that they expect. But using that type of logic, you could probably figure out quite a few picks for yourself. What we'll do now is we'll catch up on chat, talk about some strategy as well. So what I'm going to do is actually hop into the strategy talk and then the Q&A. So I'll give you guys a little bit of time to put questions down there. Before the strategy talk section, we're essentially just going to talk through my thought process when hand building a few lineups. So we'll do a GPP lineup together, just the first 4 spots, because with that DraftKings terms of service, not allowed to go out there and do all 6 spots. So we'll just do 4 here on stream. But we'll go through that. We'll go through it like a single entry contest. So if I'm only entering like 1, maybe 3 lineups into a contest, how I'm approaching those type of builds. And then at the end, a cash build too. So let's start off with the large field GPP. So assuming that we're perhaps entering this contest where it's 250K to first, going against nearly 60,000 other entries, we definitely have to consider ownership. And for me, I like the idea that JG kind of put through chat before, and I'm doing in quite a few lineups this week of just starting in the 9K range. Maybe starting with a Troll Hen, somebody who's going to be extremely low owned. Just by doing that, you can almost make your lineup unique. And let me show you the type of chalk you can take. If you wanted to play Siwoo Kim, you could certainly do so. If you wanted to play Ji-Young Kim, you could do so too. Hey, if you wanted to play JT Post and really get like a chong gonking about it, you can probably play him too and not have any sort of trouble. And at that point, we still have $7,500 remaining. So if we wanted to, finish this off with an Adam Long, who again, I think is going to be relatively chalky here, and finish it lastly, let's say with Harris English. Actually, no, not with that. Whoever you guys want for your last pick there in your lineup. This type of lineup, I would be more than okay with entering, right? Because Terrell Hatton, relatively low owned, it pretty much opens up the rest of the spots. Like I'm okay with taking a chalky Siwoo Kim if I'm starting with a Hatton. I'm okay taking a chalky Ji-Young Kim and somebody like a JT Poston in the same lineup, just because I'm avoiding all of this chalk. Like almost everybody's going to play somebody here in this 10K range. So the beauty of going to somebody and starting here in the 9K range is opening up taking the chalk. And like I mentioned, I love JT Poston. I love Siwoo Kim this week. And frankly, in my large field GPPs, I just can't avoid them. So that's how I'm going out and doing so. I'm not going to take a lineup that starts with Sung Jae Im. And then let's make this a better example here. Let's go down from Ji-Young Kim, take somebody here in the 7K range. Let's see. Stallings will be pretty chalky on the slate. I wouldn't want to take this type of lineup, right? Whereas a Sung Jae Im is going to be like 25% owned up top. It doesn't seem like a massive difference, but I mean, you're playing against 15,000 other entries with Sung Jae Im, right? I mean, he's going to be like 25% owned, maybe right around there in this contest. Whereas if you started with somebody, try like a Troll Hatton, right? You're not dealing with nearly as many entries. And arguably, I'd say it lowers your chances of duplicating yourself with the field like tenfold, if not higher. So definitely the type of pivot that I'm trying to make in these large field GPPs, there's different ways to do it, right? If I wanted to take a piece of chalk up top, I just wouldn't take a JT Poston. I wouldn't take a Siwoo Kim in that lineup, right? I would try to differentiate in the 8K range. Whereas, if I'm differentiating up top, I don't necessarily have to make those type of pivots. Next up, we'll do a single entry contest. And in these, I'm really trying to stick to my favorite plays on the board, which for me, I love Billy Ho this week. We talked about that quite often. Really like HV3 there too. I mean, Kevin Kisner makes quite a bit of sense with that recent form. Just trying to mix in a lot of my core picks, to be quite honest with you. That's how I try and approach that type of contest. So I'll give you my first 4 here for single entry, but this is really how I would start that type of lineup, right? Be relatively balanced about it. Still probably take a 10K guy, right? Not going to get all that cute about it here in a single entry or a 2 to 3 max. There's just no reason to do so when you're only playing against 200 to maybe 2,000 other entries. And just sticking to the bread and butter plays, right? We're not going to really go out of left field, right? So rather than taking an Alex Smalley, right? I'm not going to pivot to somebody in this range like a Nick Hardy, for example, that's going to be like 1 or 2% owned, right? You don't need to make that type of pivot, right? In this, sort of contest where you're playing against 2,000 other entries, you can be a little bit more chalky if you want to. Just stick to the guys that you project the best, right? The guys that you have a little bit more confidence in. So that's what I'm thinking for those single entry 2 to 3 max type of contests. And the last lineup I'll go ahead and start making for you guys is going to be a cash lineup. So in cash, for me, it's going to be all about the chalk, right? So in this lineup, we're starting with Siwoo Kim. He's going to be a prominent part of that lineup. I mean, in terms of the 9K range, I think Corey Connors is going to be extremely chalky. That would make quite a bit of sense. And let's see, in the 10K range, I guess it'd be probably a Webb Simpson. I guess would be the most consistent play in that range. You could argue that due to the savings, you might want to go to somebody like a Sun Yim. So let's go ahead and put him in there. And in the 7K range, let's see, towards the bottom of the 7, it's really not all that safe, right? So it's pretty much just take best player available. I think a great name for it would be somebody like a Matthew Neesmith and somebody like an Aaron Rye. So I talk about Aaron Rye all the time when it comes to cash, because Aaron Rye, he goes out there and gains like 1 shots gained to the field. I believe it's like 40% of the time. It's one of the highest marks of anybody on the PGA Tour. And in cash, that is exactly what we're looking for. So this is the type of field that I'm going with, especially for cash, where it's just chalk, and more chalk with my lineups. And maybe with the last 2 spots, like you can differentiate a little bit. I don't think you have to be nearly as chalky with 2, maybe even 3 of your spots, but in at least 3, maybe even 4 of them, make sure you're taking the guys that are up there in the top 4 to 5 in terms of ownership. Just the chalk gets even chalkier in cash, and you want to be a part of that, particularly if you can differentiate well with the last 2 to 3 spots that you're going with. So that's all I've got here for the live stream. What we're going to do now is catch up on some of the strategy talk. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, bring up my projections so that we can talk through some of the shots gained metrics for some of the players that you bring up. So I'll remind you, if there are any questions, go ahead and throw them down in chat, and I'll make sure to get back to them for you. JT or BH? So Justin, sorry, not Justin. I was going to call him Justin Thomas. He wishes he was Justin Thomas. JT Poston versus Brian Harmon. I like JT Poston more there. So obviously I like the course fit, the fact that he's won here before, the form coming in. I think it's just a smash spot for him, but obviously going to be high owned though. JG Funk says, I have lots of Adam Long. Hope he's not too highly owned. Yeah, I do too, but I think everyone does. And he's just been talked up more and more throughout the week. So yeah, man, it's unfortunate, but I don't think he's going to be low owned. Simi Thunder says, I love me some Munoz. Yeah, I love him too. That's for sure. Jack Fisher says, I had Ryan Moore at 10-1 for a top 20 finish. He's been playing like dog shit, but loves the golf course. Love myself a course history, especially for a top 10. I don't hate that whatsoever. In fact, if I could bet that at 10-1, I probably would too. Simi Thunder also agrees with that sentiment. Nick Mars says, if Sabatini treats you well this week, you dress like him in your next golf outing. Maybe, honestly. If he ends up going out there, wins this event, maybe I'll wear a flamingo shirt, wear one of those like cowboy style hats out there. Yeah, that may have to be something that I do there. Make Tech says, what if I run this in league? Yeah, so this morning I went off in league. So I don't know if you guys know Prize Picks, but they do League of Legends on there. I was up at 4 a.m. this morning sweating league tickets because I was like perfect. I ended up going 7-0 on it, making like $1,100 today, which, maybe I need to become a league tout at this point. But yeah, that was a lot of fun today. That's for sure. And last question we have here is JG Funky says, I'm starting with Corey Connors. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I'll just say that much, JG, but hey, I can't play everybody. I'm not going to get everybody right too. So, hey, might go your direction, might go my direction. We'll have to see, right? But I don't hate it at all. Like, I like going to Terrell Hatton here. Even if you wanted to start with like Russell Henley, like, I get it, particularly because it just makes you so unique right there, right? Everyone's going to try and jam in one of these guys up top. Like, I haven't heard many people consider starting in the 9K range. So I don't really care who it is, right? It can be Corey Connors for all I care, right? I'm fading his ass, right? I'm not playing that bum, but you can go ahead and play him if you want to. That's fine. I don't mind the strategy aspect though, right? Starting with somebody in the 9K range. And I'll just say Russell Henley, not really a big fan of him either, but if you wanted to start lineups with Russell Henley, I understand the sentiment. It makes a lot of sense from the game theory aspect. But that's all I've got here, guys. We'll be ending it here at this point. I appreciate all the support as per usual. On your way out, feel free to go ahead and smash that like button if you guys enjoyed the content here. And also going to be doing some showdown content and Prize Picks videos throughout the weekend. So for rounds 2 through 4, expect a live stream right around 7:30 or 8 p.m. Eastern time. You'll see updates on my social media for when I'm going live. And then afterwards, probably around like 9:30 p.m., we'll be coming out with the Prize Picks videos. We had an epic Sunday there. Hopefully going to have an epic start to the week on Prize Picks here on Thursday. So looking forward to that aspect as well. But best of luck with all of your lineups, for all of your Prize Pick slips. If you're going that direction this week, hopefully can be a week of stacking up some units, because after this, guys, we've got the FedEx Cup playoffs going to be a lot of fun. A lot on the line. All of the best players will be playing, which is really the beauty of that first playoff event. It's kind of like a players championship, right? It's the top 125 players in the world, the cream of the crop going out there and competing, especially with a lot of money on the line. You tend to see some really stellar play. So I'm looking forward to it. Remember, DJ ended up shooting like 30 under par at the Northern Trust a few years ago. Might see something like that this time around too. So like I said, guys, best of luck with all of your lineups, and I'll catch you guys